What's up guys, it's me Roku back with some Elite content. I'm here to inform you about the sponsor of our current video, Skillshare. Skillshare is essentially our one-stop shop on the internet for learning new skills or even improving at skills that you already learned but maybe you want to refine them. They have thousands and thousands of classes on a massive variety of topics. Things like coding, mathematics, time management, business development, to more silly and hobby-like things like drawing or making music. Skillshare is very useful to people who either want to get better at their hobbies or to freelancers who need to pick up more skills to improve their business or whatever the case may be. In terms of my personal journey with Skillshare, I'm both a YouTuber and a full-time student in real life. This means that I have a lot of work to do every single day, and I don't have a lot of free time to work with, so my time management skills have to be on point. This is why Skillshare is perfect for me because I can basically go through every single aspect of my time management that I do wrong and find a course on it and get better at that. Currently, I've been getting through YouTube Success by Marques Brownlee, a very successful YouTuber. This is basically a masterclass on how to do very well on YouTube, so I've been trying to pick these skills up in order to succeed even harder with my channel. So yeah, what are you waiting for? The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description and the pinned comments will get a 1-month-long free trial. This is an entire month of content, classes, and just information for you to get better at all the skills that you want to get better at. Thank you very much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Hello everybody, it's me, Roku, back with some more Elite content, and we are on the PBE yet again. Riot has added all the changes that they're planning for the next season 2023, to the PBE right now, which includes all the new item changes, these new pings right here, push, bait, hold, and all in, the new dragon that they brought back from previous seasons, and also changes to the jungle among many other changes that we're not going to get into right now because this video is dedicated to the items. What we're going to do in this video is get an in-depth look at every single one of these items, demonstrate how they work in-game with this dummy right here, then we're going to talk about which kind of champions would use these items in addition to whether these items will be popular in the first place. The first item that we're going to take a look at is Icathia's Endurance. This is a new tank mythic item that will allow for tanks to build up resistances in a fight the longer it goes on for. If we read the description of the item, we get a lot of great stats. In addition to that, we get a passive that gives us 2 armor and magic resist for every second that we are in combat for, stacking up to 8. At max stacks, so 8 seconds in combat, you basically get this blast around you that steals HP from every single enemy champion around you. So in order to see the full effect of this, we have to take damage first. Let's go here. And with Darius, basically, you can stay in the full 8 seconds in combat because of your bleed stacks. So let's get into it. As you guys can see, we're getting more magic resist and armor. And after the full time, bam, we steal HP from the enemy. This HP stacks with 3% of your max health, but it gets reduced to 1% when you're up against minions and monsters. So this item does steal HP from minions around you, so it's even more effective in minion waves. Alright, so let's see how this item would function with full tank stats. Alright, we're in combat. The amount of resistance is increasing. And boom. You get a decent amount of HP. That's not significant for big tanks, but keep in mind this is just one target. So if we get an entire team in here, or basically almost an entire team, the amount of healing they're going to receive is going to be way better than just one target. Bang. Obviously, that's not really anything significant compared to the amount of healing we see in game right now with Aatrox, Kayn, and whatever, but it might be kind of impactful for a tank because not only are they getting healing, but they're getting more resistances, so that extra health will be worth even more. This item works best in busy minion waves because if we hold the minion wave right here, so let's just spawn an allied dummy. So this is just one enemy champion, but a full minion wave. 400. That's way more than just one target, because with one target we just got 150 gold, 50 HP, but with a full minion wave we get way more than that HP. So this item works best in busy fights with lots of different units around the fight. The big draw of the item isn't actually the healing, but more so the resistances, because it's going to give you a lot of stats. If we do the math real quick, you get somewhere between, so on the item description, it says that you get up to 2 armor and MR up to 8 times, so that's 16. Plus, you get a 10% additional boost of armor and MR. And most of the time, you're getting anywhere between 10 to 30 amount of armor and MR depending on what your champion is packing. So add that to what the item already has, and we're talking anywhere between 26 to 40 armor magic resistance, which on top of the default stats that the item already gives is a ton of resistances. So this item is going to make you really tanky, and it's basically designed for champions who like to get into the middle of the fight, who already have ways to do so. You're talking about your Zaxxon, etc., your Ornns, your Malphites, who can get into the fight, but they don't have to affect every single champion to get that burst of healing from all of them. In my opinion, this item is going to be somewhat popular because it makes tanks the tankiest out of all the possible mythics, and it does a lot of burst damage to everybody around you, so it's pretty good for the type of champions that I listed previously. The mythic passive of Icathio's Endurance adds 5 armor and magic resistance per item that you buy, which really just adds the total amount of resistance that you're getting from this item to really make you unkillable until the enemy carriers get armor pen and magic pen. The next item we're going to take a look at is Radiant Virtue. Now, Radiant Virtue is more of a supportive tank item where if you use your ultimate, you're going to basically give a buff to every single champion around you and yourself. So let's just read about it. Every time you ult, you get 10% extra max health, and you are transcendent among with all your allies around you. Transcendent allies get 15 non-ultimate ability haste, so their abilities cast 15% faster, and every 3 seconds they heal for 1% of your max health. So you're giving everybody healing, you're making everybody all attack their abilities faster, and you're making yourself slightly more durable with some max health. And also, the healing gets increased for champions who are lower on health, if you care about that. This item is going to work best with more supportive champions who don't like to fight on their own. Champions like your Nauluses and your Leonas, but the thing with Radiant Virtue is that it mainly works if your teammates are ability casters who like to spam abilities in fights. If your allies have a lot of auto-attacking abilities, they just do most of their damage through auto-attacks, then you're not going to get a lot out of this item because it only increases your teammates' DPS through their abilities. But if you have ability spamming champions on your team, then you as a supportive champion have one more tool to make them even more powerful. Think of it as like an Ardent Censer, but for ability casts, in terms of that's the item you're going to buy as a supportive champion to help champions who like to cast more abilities. And the way it looks in game is like this. Okay, we're transcended. Everybody is also transcended because they have this bright glowing effect around them. And as you can see, we're actually healing for a bit of our health every single 3 seconds. I don't think this item will be too popular, but if you buy it in the right time, it can be absolutely devastating. The mythic passive of Radiant Virtue is 100 health for every single legendary item that you buy, which isn't the best, but it's still a pretty good passive because you get 100 entire health every single time you get an item. The next item we're going to talk about is Iceborne Gauntlet. Now, Iceborne Gauntlet was this version way before Season 11, before the item rework, where it got changed into the current version, which is Pharaswar Gauntlet, but now it's back to its old self with Sheen. What this item basically does is when you use an ability, so let's use RE, you get an empowered auto attack that allows you to create a frozen area around your target, like this. Any enemy that tries to pass through the frozen area gets slowed by 15% plus some of your bonus health, but because the item itself offers health by default, because you're trying to build it, the slow is going to start out for 23%. Now, they've added a new effect to this, where the target that you're actually auto-attacking gets an additional effect where they are crippled. So the crippled target receives twice the slow that's being dealt to the entire area, and on top of that, they deal 10% less damage against the user of Iceborne Gauntlet. So if this is a Riven or something and I do the Iceborne Gauntlet Snow Layer against her, she's slowed by 46%, and she deals less damage to me by 10%. Her damage against me is reduced by 10%, which is absolutely huge. And the thing about this is that the effect of Crippled lasts for 2.5 seconds, which is less than the cooldown of the Sheen. So what you're basically looking at is being able to keep someone in that crippled state for a very, very long time. So W, fight them, fight them, fight them. Sheen's back up, Q, auto, and then we're using it again. This item is going to be absolutely huge on Juggernauts and top laners in general who have a lot of base stats, and they're fighting against other top laners who have a lot of damage to the point where they can just be one-shot. So if you're, let's say, a Darius, a York, a Nasus, and you're fighting some super jumpy AD character with lots of dashes and stuff, then you can use this item to just set them down in their place, and have them deal less damage to you so you can kite them better or hold them in their place to land your abilities. Whatever you need to do, this item can help you with the Frozen Zone. Now, they have removed stats from the item as opposed to its previous version, and it's not as good as it used to be in terms of team fights, but it's still an amazing item in the side lane for a more tanky champion, especially if you're losing lane. And also, as an added bonus, the Mythic passive has been upgraded to 50 health, 5 tenacity, and 5 slow resist, which is absolutely insane. That is a great Mythic passive among some of the best in the game, so Iceborne Gauntlet is a great addition to the game for a lot of these fighters who kind of have trouble sometimes fighting some of these higher damage dealing champions. Our next item is Goliath Ascendancy, and this is by far one of the most interesting items that they added to the game so far. What it basically does is that when you approach an enemy champion, they get this Demolish proc right next to them. Actually, that's going to be quite annoying, so I'm going to remove all of them and just add one enemy champion. So you get these crystals that tick down like you would get those crystals around the turret, and then you can go for an auto attack. Bang. Now what this does is that the damage that you deal with this auto attack scales off of your HP. So if we see right here, it scales off of our total, 7% of our total health, and 10% of that damage gets added to your health as permanently stacking health. So this item is essentially like an infinitely scaling HP that's going to give you a lot of single target burst on top of all that. I don't even need to say who this is good for. Obviously, Sion is a great example of a champion who's going to absolutely love this because you're going to get a lot of health with this item, and on top of that, you're going to get a lot of burst too, which he absolutely loves. Alright, I got a full HP build right here with 5,000 health. Let's see how much damage we can get out of this item. That's almost 800 damage just from this item on an auto attack. That is absolutely huge because to these big beefy tanks, it adds burst to them, which is absolutely crazy and unheard of, but you know, it's really useful. So if you're playing a tank who likes to burst single targets down, like your Scions or Cho'Gaths, and you really love scaling as much HP as possible, this item is really nice. Now, this item is not the best in teamfights because 1, it's only a single target attack, and 2, it's got a 30-second cooldown, so you might not get 2 uses out of it in a single given teamfight, but still, it's an amazing item if you're playing a tank that likes to side lane. The Mythic passive for this item is that for every legendary that you buy, you get 1% extra health and 6% extra champion size. Now, that 1% extra health might look good on paper, but in reality, it's really worse than 50 health Mythic passives because until you hit the point where you have 5,000 health, that 1% is going to be less than that, so you're not getting a lot from that Mythic passive most of the time. The item that a lot of mage players have missed since it got removed is Rod of Ages. Now, what Rod of Ages does is that it doesn't really have a real passive or an active, but basically, after you buy it, for every single minute, you get extra stats until 10 minutes. So right now, it has base stats of 60 AP, 300 health, and 400 mana. But for every single minute, you get 20 health, 20 mana, and 4 ability power. And at 10 minutes, you get 40 AP, 200 mana, and 200 health, combined with a total stat from this item of 100 AP, 500 health, and 600 mana. This is an insane number of stats for an item. And it also comes with this tiny little passive called Genesis, where every time you actually cast a spell, so let's just take some damage. Every time you cast a spell, you gain 100 health. So let's cast a spell. There you go, 100 health. Now, the cooldown of this passive is going to be 25 seconds initially, with it getting reduced by 1 second every single time we get another minute of stats from Rod of Ages. Now, in my opinion, although this sounds great on paper, Rod of Ages won't be that useful for most mages because the current mage meta is like this, okay? So let's just look at the mage items. Most mages either go for Lion Reduced Anguish if their champion synergizes with it because you can get like 4, 5, 6,000 damage by the end of the game with this item, just its passive alone. They go for Luden's Tempest to one-shot people because it gives a lot of great stats, and it gives Magic Pen, which lets you get a lot more one-shots of, or they go for Everfrost in case they need to hold an enemy champion down to do the rest of their combo. Then you are looking at niche items like Protobelt getting required for champions who like to dash in, like cannons and stuff. Your Crown of Shire Queen, which is not really a popular item in Europe, but it's useful in champions that like to kind of scale. You see it on Victors sometimes, but not even that anymore. You never see Night Harvester and Riftmaker unless you're looking at a champion that doesn't really have a good mythic anyway, in which case they sometimes go Riftmaker like Mordekaiser, but nobody goes Riftmaker. All I'm saying is, the current version of Rod of Ages that's being added to the PvE and will be added to the game doesn't really do anything for mages. It doesn't give you more damage. It doesn't give you a ton of the stats that you need. It has no ability haste. It has no armor pen. And it really doesn't give you any utility like Everfrost. So the only champions that would like this are mages that need to be stat balls who also scale with levels. Which I don't think there are any. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only mage that likes to have a massive level lead is basically Kassadin. Every single other mage, although they love to have a massive level lead, they more so like to get a bunch of items and just start one-shotting people left and right. So even Kassadin himself, although he likes his level 16, I'm pretty sure Kassadin can get more usage out of Everfrost. So this is one item that I'm pretty iffy on the use cases of. I don't think a lot of champions will be using it at all. The mythic passive of 5 ability haste per item does kind of patch this weakness a tiny bit, but again, compared to other items that give that right off the bat, it really does much less than them. And also, a lot of mages go items that give them ability haste anyway, so they won't really need that extra from the Rod of Ages. The next item isn't too significant, it's just an epic item that's in the build path with a new Abyssal Mask and the Rod of Ages. This is basically just a good item for sustain in lane. Every single time you use mana, you heal for 20% of that up to 15 per cast. So let's say you cast an ability with 100 mana cost, you get up to 15 health back. So in this case, 20% of that is 20, up to 15 is over 15. So you can get 15 health from that. And every time you take damage, you get 15% of the damage back as mana. So it really helps champions who get pushed out of lane, because even though they do get their health whittled away sometimes, they have the mana to actually, stay in lane, because a lot of these champions in losing matchups, you have to use a lot of abilities to even stay in lane. Now that we're done with the mythic items and also this epic item, let's get into the legendary, starting off with Abyssal Mask. Now, Abyssal Mask is a tank magic resist item that gives you a lot of great stats, but what's really crazy about this item is the passives. First off, you get the Eternity thing from the Catalyst of Aeons, it's just this exact same passive, but it has its own curse. Think of it as the Frozen Heart aura of attack speed slows, but it's more about stealing magic resist from people. So this guy has 0 magic resist and I have 90, but if I approach him and put him in the area, I get 9 magic resist and he loses 11. You can see how it scales right here, where you gain 9, it doesn't scale, but the amount you reduce from the enemy champions scales by your bonus health. So this item is essentially giving you magic penetration for all the enemy champions that are going to be around you. So if you're a tank that can get into the deep fights, and you have AP damage dealers on your team, this item is going to be perfect to just make sure everybody on your team deals way more damage, so like an Amumu or something. Now, some tank champions like to get in there and do damage on their own, in which case this item will be perfect, because if you build a lot of health, so let's just build a lot of health here. So now we have 5,000 health, and we've basically maxed out the amount of magic resist we can remove from the enemy. This is basically the same as 25 magic penetration flat. So if you're playing a Zac or something, and you're really fed, you can get this item and then just start one-shotting squishies because you have 25 magic penetration, right? So this is going to be great on tank champions that do magic damage, who like to get into fights themselves, in the middle of the fights, who basically, if they get fed, they can start one-shotting people. And it's great for supportive tanks who have AP champions on their team that they like to create more damage for. Because if you get into an entire enemy backline, you ult them or whatever, then your mage is going to be able to have an easier time one-shotting all of them. So this item is great for those purposes. Up next, we got Sunflower Aegis. Now this used to be a mythic item, now they changed it back to being identical to what it used to be back in Season 10, I think. What it basically does right now is that it gives you health, it gives you armor, and just does immolate damage to all champions and targets around you. The more time you spend in a fight, the more the immolate damage stacks up. So if you damage this champion, the immolate stack is going to keep stacking up and up and up until you hit 6 stacks, at which point it will increase the amount of damage by 10%. Now this really isn't the most impactful tank item in the game. I'm not really sure who would build this, because let's be honest, there are better items at reducing physical damage. There are better items at reducing magic damage. There are better items if you're being aggressive. So I only think this is useful for tank champions who maybe struggle to clear waves or camps. It's like Tiamat for tank characters, but even in those cases, it's like champions who jungle and go top as tanks generally have decent enough wave clear on their own. Like, I really don't see a big use case for this unless you're playing a tank and you want to get a first item against an AD damage dealer, for example, or some sort of case like that. The next item we're going to take a look at is Turbo Chem Tank. Now, Turbo Chem Tank is functionally the exact same as it used to be before. You press the button, you go really fast, and then when you reach the enemy, you get the move speed to blow up into the enemy and to slow everybody, but then you no longer get the move speed buff. It's basically an engage item for tank champions, like to walk up on the enemy. Exact same as before, but with one big difference. It's no longer a mythic. This might sound like a small thing, but it really isn't, because back, or I guess currently in Season 12, the Turbo Chem Tank mythic itself is really bad compared to other mythics. It doesn't give good stats, and the active, it just kind of feels a little gimmicky. Like, you look at Divine Sunder or other mythic passives, or just passive items on mythics that stays with you for the entirety of the fight, whereas Turbo Chem Tank kind of just works once, which is really underwhelming, and the damage it gives is not even that impressive. Now, you can get this item as a second item, third item instead of your mythic, so you don't have to sacrifice a big portion of your build and still get the ability to engage onto the enemy by just running at them with this item. Now, one clear weakness is that it gives magic resist only. It does not give armor. My honest recommendation is for them to shift this to give 20 armor and 30 magic resist or something like this, but it doesn't really matter too much, right? It's not going to probably change the best of my recommendations, so whatever. But still, right? Tanks are going to love this, tanks that like to walk up on people. Even bruisers or juggernautic champions like Volibear or characters like they love to just run in on people to engage the fight, but they don't really have the gap closers to do that. So yeah, that's Turbo Chem Tank. The next legendary item is Randuin's Omen. Now, Randuin's Omen is basically reverted to the way it used to be before the item rework. Now, the key thing to understand is that the critical strike has gone from being a part of the active to being a part of the passive. Now, we still get rock solid, right? We don't get the ability haste anymore. We still get great stats in terms of health and armor, but the active is just as slow. The big problem with Randuin's Omen before was that to get the crit reduction, you had to actually get really up close to the enemy AD carry, which is not always possible because they're kiting you from like a really high range, so you have to get on top of them. And let's be honest, if you're able to get on top of an ADC, they're probably dead already anyway. So like, let's just say that the use case for Randuin's Omen was really bad, or just like you really needed it sometimes, but it was just quite tough to get done right. Now, the crit damage reduction is basically on you. So every time you get hit by a crit, the damage gets reduced by itself. So it's a perfect item right now to counter any big crit carry in the game. And the slow is pretty significant because it's 55% for 2 seconds, which is enough to basically catch someone out and do the rest of your combo or get your team to going on them, whatever. This is basically your premier armor item against champions who like to use crit. This is going to be used by all tanks, but it's going to be slightly weaker for ADCs that like to build Randuin's Omen, because remember, sometimes, especially in higher ranked games, if an ADC finds that they're getting one shot by an assassin, like a Kog'Maw or a Vayne, they already have their damage. They might opt for a Randuin's Omen last item. This makes it weaker for them because, hey, look, critical strikes are what the AD carries are doing to everybody else. Everybody else is doing other types of damage, so it's going to be weaker on champions like to build it as a last item when they are damage dealers, and it's going to be a bit stronger on champions that can get into the range of the crit characters. The next item we're going to take a look at is Spear of Shojin. Now, Spear of Shojin had quite a short life before when it got added to the game, where it made a bunch of champions completely broken, and now it's back, but not quite the same. So it has passives. It doesn't have an active or anything that activates based on some sort of event, some sort of big event. You get two passives. One, every single non-ultimate ability gets 14 ability haste, and the CC you have gains only 7 ability haste. This scales up with how much AD you have, by the way. How much bonus AD you have. So the more bonus AD you have, let's just buy a bunch of AD items. So we're gonna have a bunch of AD items. Obviously, this build is really unrealistic, but right now we get 32 ability haste for non-ultimate abilities, and 16 ability haste for our CC ability. This sounds huge on paper, but you have to remember that with how Riot has changed ability haste for the game, the more you get, the less impactful it's going to be, so it's not as good as it looks. Still, this item is going to be amazing for champions who like to build a ton of AD, who like to spam their abilities. So we're talking Rivens, your Aatroxes, they're going to absolutely love this item. The second passive is actually quite huge. Basically, when you are lower HP, you get more move speed. So right now we are at lowest HP possible, and this item gives us the max move speed it can offer us, which is 15% at 30% of our HP. This is less for range champions, by the way, at 10%, but yeah. So as you guys can see, we have a lot more move speed than we used to, but if we start healing up, that move speed goes away. So this is going to be great for champions who are 1, melee, because melee champions take more damage than range champions, 2, who like to spam their abilities, 3, who build a ton of AD, so Riven, Aatrox, and etc. Spear Shojin is going to be an amazing substitute for Black Cleaver, because a lot of these champions that want a lot of abilities in their kit are kind of pigeonholed into Cleaver, but now they have an option that can actually scale with them and help them out way more than that item. The next item that I bought unwillingly was Ravenous Hydra. Now, Ravenous Hydra has received quite an interesting rework. The stats are pretty understandable, but first things first, the cleave does a lot more damage. So it does 60% of your AD here. So before it used to be pretty negligible, but right now, it's not just bonus, it's like your total AD. There we go. 60% of that goes to all the other targets around us, so wave clearers are gonna love this. And on top of that, for every creep that you kill, you get 0.5 AD and 0.1 Omnivamp, with that increasing to 1 AD and 0.2 Omnivamp for every champion, large monster, or siege minion that you take down. It takes 50 kills, 50 minions, or 25 large monster kills to get this item to its max stacks, which is 25 AD and 5 Omnivamp. This is absolutely huge on champions that already buy this item like Camille and Fiora. Basically, the champions that would like to use this item is champs who like the stats, and champions who like to farm a lot and then get right into the action, and they like to snowball. So Fioras, Rivens, your Camille's, some champions like even Aatrox might enjoy this, but it really depends, right? If your champion is snowballing, you have one lane, you might want to go for this item because it's going to give you a lot of stats to work with. In terms of Darius, because this is a Darius channel, he's going to love Frostfire Gauntlet or Iceborne Gauntlet. This is going to be an amazing item for him. He's going to love Turbo Chem Tank. It's a great item if you want to catch up to people. Randuin's a classic. He's going to love this. Sunfire is going to be useless. Abyssal Mask is going to be useless. Rod, obviously useless. Goliath's Ascendancy is not going to be too useful on him because, again, Darius likes to fight multiple targets. He's not really a health stacking big tank guy. This item is not going to be good at him at all. Acanthia's Andreas might be useful if you're going for a full tank build, but honestly, that's just not the playstyle of Darius, and if you're doing that on Darius, you might as well go for another item or another champion, actually. Spear Shojin is not going to be too useful in Darius because Darius already has low cooldowns on his main abilities, so you're not getting too much out of this item. As for Ravenous Hydra, I hope it goes without being said, but Darius likes to die a lot. He's melee, and he's not really a champion that can actually get a lot of use of this item because it doesn't give you any defensive stats, and Omnivamp is useless on him, so Darius won't like Ravenous Hydra. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I'm planning on making more gameplay videos with these items to really show you guys what you can do with them. Anyway, I'll see you guys next one. Peace out.